Hey everybody, and on today's vlog, we're going to be talking about Star Eater by 5V Games, coming to Kickstarter December 7th. So let's get into it. Hey Sarah, how's it going?
I'm well.
So what are we going to be playing today?
Today we are playing a prototype of a game called Star Eater, which is primarily a two-player combat game set in space. They are still playtesting a sort of third faction, which they have sent us the current prototype components for. However, since it is mostly a two-player game, that is what we're going to be playing today, is a two-player. Plus, that's usually what we play on the channel, is two players, especially under COVID-19 restrictions and lockdowns. So we're going to be playing the two-player game today. Like I said, it's a sort of head-to-head combat style game set in deep space where each player controls their own personal ship. So this is sort of a map, I guess, of my ship. This is actually my ship in space, so it's going to move about on this board here and attempt to destroy Nick's ship, which should be over here, actually. And so this is like a physical representation of my ship. It has shields around it, or it can have shields around it, and we do get to start with some of those shields around it. So each of these sort of vectors around the aircraft itself can be shielded. However, if my enemy is able to reduce the shields in one or more areas completely, then there's an opening for them to attack my ship. And that is how a player is going to win the game, by destroying enough of the shield around the ship to eventually be able to actually fire into the ship itself and damage it completely. So this is sort of, like I said, a sort of representation of my ship. This is my physical ship right here. And then this right here sort of represents all of the things at my control as the captain of this ship. So I have some offensive and defensive mechanisms at my disposal. I have a fleet of smaller ships which can be deployed from my larger ship, and these are represented by these really small ships that would come out from the ship here, and then they can fly off into sort of the atmosphere and also attempt to make attacks and that kind of thing. So this sort of represents the systems at my disposal. We also each get a deck of asymmetric cards, which are going to allow us to sort of make attacks of opportunity or to deploy more equipment or vehicles. It's going to let us sort of heal damage that occurs to us, that kind of stuff. So we each have this deck of cards, and then we also have these engine cards. And I think this is one of the most interesting parts of the game to me personally, is that our ships are going to be moving every round of the game with momentum. So if my ship had been moving in this direction over the course of the game, it will continue to move in that direction over the course of the game, and I don't have to do anything to get it to move that way. But if I crash into another ship, if I were to run off the map, that kind of thing, I can incur damage. So momentum is great, but it can be problematic too. So this little dial here, we would set this dial each privately and simultaneously, and then when we are ready, we'll reveal this and we'll add some momentum to the ship's existing sort of momentum that it's already gathered. And then it will continue to move in the manner in which it's moved previously, and it will move in the new way that we've assigned it as well. So, yeah, that's an interesting part of the game. Everything is asymmetric, so you have similar things. You also have a ship. You also have weapon systems and defense and that kind of stuff, but all of your stuff is unique to your sort of faction.
Yeah, it's faction-based.
Yeah, so even though it is fairly involved as far as like It's asymmetric, so anytime you play an asymmetric game, that means that each player has their own sort of stuff that they get to do and they get to use that nobody else does. So anytime you're playing an asymmetric game, there's always a little bit more to learn than if we were playing a symmetric game, because you have a whole set of things that you can do, and I have a whole set of things that I can do, so we each have to learn what that is separately, right? So it's a little more complex just because of its asymmetric nature, but it's not super, super heavy either. The rule book is, this is still a prototype, but the rule book is fairly extensive. And when I first looked at it and I looked at all the components and everything, I thought that it was going to be like really, really heavy, which I don't prefer games like that unless someone else is teaching and unless I feel like we have plenty of time. There's nothing else like vying for our attention during the time that we would set aside to play the game. So I don't particularly prefer heavy games, but after having actually read through the rules and looked at everything, it's not as heavy as I expected, which was a pleasant surprise for me. It's heavy enough, I think, to be interesting and to definitely disqualify it as like a light game, but it's not so heavy that it's not going to be easy to pick up on. It's not going to be easy to like play through your first game, that kind of thing. The rule book is just very, very detailed, which is really nice. There's examples. Everything is, when they used enough words to get their point across succinctly, but they didn't use too few words, which is nice, because sometimes I think in an effort to make a rule book seem really approachable or to make a game seem really fast and easy to get off the ground kind of thing, then people sort of tend to like over shorten rule books, and then you're like, well, I have questions, or this isn't really clear to me. So I did appreciate that in the rule book. It seemed like it was going to be kind of intimidating at first, just because it's a big chunky rule book, but it was a lot of information that was nice to have, but easy to take in as well. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I have this ship here, and Nick has this ship here. There is a great deal of backstory and like sort of flavor text that was provided for this as well. Like I said, this is the rule book, and it's like many pages long, and there's actually like a whole nother booklet like this of just the flavor text and the background story and stuff like that. So we're not going to get into all that right now. We're just going to play the game and yeah, see how we like it, see what we think about it.
Yep. So we'll get back to you guys in our midway through the game, and then so on and so forth. So we'll get back to you guys in a second here, and yeah, toodles. Hey, sir, how's it going?
Good. So I'm not really sure where we are in terms of like halfway through the game, or I'm not really sure where we are there.
Probably somewhere maybe less,
a third,
yeah,
I think, because you've just done some damage that completely killed off my last shield on one of the spaces surrounding my ship.
Exposed.
So the next time you're able to fire into this area of my ship, you'll actually do real damage to
like
the
hull
ship
damage,
itself.
yeah,
exactly, like hull damage. So I think probably we're about a third of the way through the game. Now,
especially if I'm still able to like attack that.
Yeah, obviously now I might be able to evade you, or I might be able to like turn my ship around or something like that. But I feel like based on what's happened so far in the game and what it feels like we might have left, I think we're about a third of the way through the game. But we've already seen a collision. We bumped into each other.
We shot torpedoes.
We shot torpedoes.
I shot some lasers in the air, like I just didn't care.
Yep.
And you threw a torpedo at me
I did.
I got to watch from the sidelines and was very nervous about.
You have smashed a couple of my little Corvettes, and I've smashed one of yours. So yeah, I feel like we've seen quite a bit happen in the game already, even though we are not more than halfway through, for sure, I think. But we've already seen quite a bit going on. What do you think so far?
So within this game, it reminds me of Star Wars X-Wing and a little bit of Star Wars Armada, but they're very different. This is like what I think is like the board game version of this, because
Also, I don't think you have this kind of stuff in X-Wing.
you have a little bit. You have cards, so you can build up like your squad and then any kind of extra stuff. And some of that stuff is like a one-time use. So you have like points, and you allocate so many points to your thing, but you can't go over those points. But this is just seems like this is like your setup, because it like your main cannon, broadsides, point defense, specials seem like they can switch within the game, and which is interesting. I think this is a little easier than Star Wars X-Wing, just because of the...
Well, in X-Wing, you have to do...
You've got the maneuvers,
right?
yeah, the measurements.
You also have to, like, measure out whether or not you're actually, like...
And you actually can't measure before you move or before you fire, or there's, like, specific guidelines on when you can or can't do that.
The movement in this one is pretty simple. It's hex-based, so there's hexes on the board, and then you play this engine card, which has a dial on it, and at the beginning of each turn, you secretly set your dial to the result that you want to use, and then when players are ready, we each reveal our engine card, and we add this result to a track which has momentum on it. Now, we've just lost all of our momentum because we crashed into each other, but let's pretend that it had looked something like, let's just do this. Okay, so we'll do that, and then we'll say that I played this result on my engine card this time. So I would translate that to my track and add another thing like this, and then we would carry out our movement. So my ship would move one space this way, then it would move one space this way, then it would move one space this way. And you do that every time. You follow the momentum that you've established in previous turns. And it can actually be, this in and of itself, I think, is one of the interesting parts of the game, because you have to sort of manage your momentum. If you ignore it, you might end up crashing into the edge of the board or the enemy ship. And if you do that, you'll actually damage your own ship. And you may be able to get some damage to the other player as well, but you're also going to incur damage yourself. So I think that managing your momentum is one of the interesting parts of this game. Like I said, you have to carry this out every single turn. So if you get, quite a few tokens every turn, you're going to be moving, and it's just a little bit, right? It's just like these little hex-based movements here. It's not that much, but when you're carrying out, 3 to 4 of those movements every turn, it can be like, it can add up to something that you really need to pay attention to.
It reminds me of like a program moving game where you program how your thing moves, and if you don't pay attention, or you don't, if you're not careful of where you go, you'll spin out of control, and then you'll be frustrated because you're like all stuck. But in this game, at least, there's the, if you crash into something, you get to kind of that reset button, so you can kind of get yourself
Plus,
together.
you can always cancel out one of your momentum. So, like, let's say that I had this established, and I no longer wanted to be doing this, right? So I could set my dial on my engine card to the exact opposite result of that, and then, I think it's that one. So then, when I play the result, it's going to be the exact opposite of the previous one, and then these two just cancel each other out, and I just get to remove them. And so there are ways to sort of alter
reset,
this. Yeah. Plus, I have a card. I don't know if you do, but
I think that's
because
a
our decks are
faction-based.
asymmetric.
Yeah.
But I have a card that lets me manipulate the tokens on my track here as well. So that to me is one of the interesting parts of the game, is managing your momentum to make sure that you're actually traveling in the direction in which you want to travel, and that it remains the direction that you want to travel in. Because as you're building on this, you may want to like change direction, or you may end up in a position where you'd be like, oh, if I was just a little bit like this way, I could fire my cannons or something like that. So this is really, to me, is an interesting part of the sort of management of your resources, is this momentum. This is a resource in and of itself, but it's a double-edged thing. It can be like good for you or bad for you. And I think that's a really interesting part of the game. I like too, I like having I like that it's asymmetric, and I like that I have like my own sort of infrastructure to manage here. And I like that, like it feels very galactic, right? We've got like, this is our map, this is where we're moving, but this is actually like the diagram of our ship. And then this is actually like our control panel, right? So it feels like, to a point, it feels like you're actually like some sort of space captain.
In a battle station,
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, go, dang it, go!
So that's kind of cool. I think that I'm probably won't be very good at this kind of game. I'm typically not super great at program movement style games anyway, so I'm not particularly wonderful at piloting my ship around the universe. And
just like the long strategy, because like I think at the first time we are just throwing our little corvettes at each other, and we shot them too close, or we wanted to get them in action already. So it was, I lost a corvette early on. Sarah lost some.
I've lost two already.
Yeah, due to my ship crashing.
He just landed on top of one, and because they're so small, they don't do any damage to your capital ships, but they get crushed. Yeah. So my little guy was hanging out trying to get a shot off, and instead he just got squished. And
it's okay, so maybe there's a tactic of you send them out, and then you don't maybe fire them right away, but you move them around the board so they don't get squashed. They can move
pretty quickly too. So even though the big ships are bigger and could just accidentally sort of sit on them, they can move pretty quickly too. So they do have advantages as well. It's not like they're just not good at anything,
So, and then this track right here, I don't think we mentioned that before, but you play and do abilities, and these clocks mean, they put you put them where
I had
start.
Fired my helix cannons on a previous turn, and so they have a cooldown time of 1. So they would go to this one spot here on the cooldown track, and at the end of every round, everything on the cooldown track shifts down 1. And
anything in the ready spot will come, as before you move things down, you go to the ready spot and you move those things back to your hand.
If we were in this situation on this turn, then I would get to pick up this card and put it back into my hand. And then this card would move down 1, but I couldn't pick it up until my next turn.
Yeah.
So there's some neat stuff here. I feel like I said, I'm probably not going to be super great at this, because I feel like the program movement is not a huge part of the game, but I think it's a critical part of the game, and I don't necessarily always understand how to manipulate program movement to my advantage. But I did get some shots off at you, so I'm not doing terribly, I guess.
But yeah, it's an interesting game, and we're glad that the team over at 5 Volts Games sent this over to us to kind of look over, check over for their Kickstarter that's going on. I believe it's December 7th when this video comes out. It's going to be that same day, and we'll definitely have the link in the description so you guys can check it out. So we're going to keep playing, but the vlog will end here. And because this game seems like it'll take a while, and we've pretty much gone over everything within the game.
There's a decent amount of information in the rule book that we haven't exactly talked about every single particularity ever, but I think for the most part we've given you a decent overview of kind of what's in the game, how it functions, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I've seen a good chunk of it.
Again, this is 5 Volts. This is a team out of Australia. It's pretty cool. This is one of the first games we get to kind of go over that have been outside of the country, which is pretty cool, I think. And yeah, we love checking over games and playing the new hotness that's not even out yet. So
to be honest, I prefer games that are produced over prototypes. I don't have very much patience, so when I sit down at the table, I'm like, I just want to play a game that works, and I don't want to be distracted or anything from the game itself. Yeah. So Nick is a little bit more open to play testing or playing
or taking in prototypes and put them on the vlogs.
Yeah. But I do think it's really cool that we can try out games that haven't been published yet, and I think that it's awesome that we can see what's going on internationally with game development and design. That's really neat to me that we can be exposed to that.
Because I feel like there's a whole other aspect and even design flair with other countries and other cultures. Because, I think, sometimes in America you can be a certain theme or a certain mechanic can kind of dominate. And maybe in other cultures or other experiences or, maybe where other people live, they come across with games that have a unique flair to them. I know, again, this is Space Battle, so, we get a lot of that in the US, but I don't know. Who knows?
I think the board game industry and the board game community, I feel like it's a fairly small community, even though we're spread out all over the world. I feel like, and there are at least thousands of us who play games and stuff like that. I feel like when compared to some other hobbies, I feel like this is still kind of a small-ish hobby. So I think that even though Australia is, leagues away, and I've never been there, I don't know very many Australians. I have some family that live in Australia, but I've never been there. I've never really met anybody from there other than my uncle and his family. So to me, Australia is theoretically so far away. I would never be influenced by it or affected by it in any way. But the board game industry is small, and so because of this tentative little connection that we have through the board game industry, we're connected to people thousands of miles away. So that's really cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, this concludes our vlog of Star Eater by 5 Volts Games, and we hope you all enjoyed. And please check out their Kickstarter and see if you'd be interested. We hope we sparked your interest, and we hope when you visit the Kickstarter page, your interest is just over 9,000.
And tell us in the comments below which one of us you think is going to win this game.
And then we'll put it in the comments of who was the victor and who was the loser.
I feel like I'm in a decent position right now. I do have a hole in my shields, but the hole is currently kind of away from where you can fire on. So I feel like I'm kind of safe for now. And I feel like I might be able to sort of circle. I probably shouldn't say this to you before I actually try it, but
it's okay.
Maybe I can circle sort of around you and fire at you from behind, because that's where I started to deplete your shields. And if I did that, I think I could get myself into a position where I could kind of put this side of my ship towards you. So my shields are still up over here. Maybe I can get it into a position where this is the side that would be facing you. So if you fire on me, I'm still kind of protected. But I could fire on you, and I would maybe be able to continue to deplete those shields. We'll see. Maybe.
Nice.
We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, we will see you guys on our next board game vlog. Talk to you guys later. Toodles!